The title of our presentation today is Zooming in on Progress Monitoring within the MTSS framework. And we really want to present as a team today of district level leaders and school level leaders because this really is a team effort. Across the district, we have a lot of work that's being done and a lot of effort is being put into our support systems that we have in place for our students. And really all that work kind of pays off when we see the great outcomes that are coming about with students improving and making progress towards their goals. On really every day, we're seeing that progress being made. So hopefully what you'll see today is a look under the hood of our process in our district, and maybe you can gain some insight into kind of how we make things work here in Fort Mill. My name is Matt Roaring. I'm the coordinator of assessment and accountability for the district, and we'll go from left to right here. So Jennifer.
I'm Jennifer Daly, and I'm the lead teacher at Pleasant Knoll Elementary School.
And I'm Renee Beck, and I am coordinator of data integration and school improvement.
I'm George Latsos. I'm the lead teacher at Forest Creek Middle School.
And I'm Amber Smith, the director of academic intervention for the district.
All right, and then also, I think mandatory is to let you know a little bit about our district. In case you're not familiar with Fort Mill, we have some demographic information here. We are one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest still, growing districts in South Carolina. And we do have a very fortunate situation where we have a lot of our students coming to us very prepared and ready to go right in the first day of kindergarten, really. But we definitely have some unique needs that really led us down this road to create a more robust system and a framework that we have in place to really support our students and to grow them, really not just thinking about our students in need, but really all of our students. We need to make sure that we're growing on a regular basis and making that impact every day. Until we're 100% proficient, we're gonna continue this work, which would mean probably forever. All right, so first, our district level staff is going to share with you just a few slides on kind of how we're doing some work at the district level and show that we are assisting our schools and progress monitoring work all the way again from that district level on that grand scale of progress monitoring, all the way down to some student level work where they're kind of taking ownership of their own goals and progress monitoring themselves. So first we'll talk about, and this will all be on subsequent slides, we'll talk about the district and school data analysis, and then we'll move into some visualizations that we can create from that raw data that we'll share. And then we'll also get into some STAR progress monitoring reports, and also how we're training teachers and sharing STAR reports and creating some videos that will help in allowing them to gain access to valuable data within the STAR reporting suite. And then we'll finish up the district level talk with some CI3T data reviews, which are really integral to our MTSS framework as well. All right, so here we have, and I had to kind of squeeze everything into my one slide that I was allotted, or actually just one part of this slide. So really what we try to do in our roles at the district level is we really want to be able to kind of get this overarching view of how schools and the district are performing as far as growing our students go. So one of those ways that we can do that, and we do this after every one of our interim assessments, we kind of look at growth from, and this is STAR data we're looking at here. So STAR data from fall to winter is what you see here in this upper left-hand corner with the yellow and green. And you can see all throughout our presentations, the traffic light colors, the red, yellow, green, which is also mandatory for a progress monitoring presentation, I feel. But these yellow and green indications would indicate schools or maybe even the district data that is showing some really great progress towards meeting added value targets. We have actually some schools that have a really high percentage already of students that are meeting their spring targets for added value already from winter testing. So those schools we want to try to celebrate. We talk about this in our curriculum department meetings. We kind of share this data around so that we're looking at ways that we can celebrate schools that are really on track to success. And we know that STAR and SE Ready, they have a great correlation. So we can really tell, possibly what schools are really on track to do well on SE Ready just by looking at STAR data. But then also we'll see some schools that might have that yellow indication that might need a little support. So we try to offer that support. We brainstorm ideas about how we can get out to schools that might need just that extra push to get them, back on track to where they might need to be headed into spring testing with STAR, and then obviously SE Ready after that. So that's one way that we're progress monitoring. And then also to the right of that table, you'll see another table that does have a demographic breakdown of that same information, so that we can again tell from the district level kind of what subgroups that we have that are performing well, some that might not be and might need that extra support. We just really try to break everything down in different ways to kind of share with our district level staff, how we're progressing towards and growing our students, how we're progressing towards these AVT goals in this example. So again, kind of 30,000-foot view, just trying to get a way that we can have this overall data, kind of summary data, and then kind of brainstorm ways that we can support schools and celebrate schools that are doing really well. Below that, though, is really where the turnover happens, where we're taking that district level data and then breaking it down even further so that we can share kind of more applicable data to schools. And this is really all this AVT data and tracking to see who's on track for success, who's not on track for success, all the way down to the student level. So these are all students. We have students that are in red that are maybe not tracking towards success from winter testing as far as their AVT goals are concerned. We have students that are in yellow that are really on track to meet those goals. And then also we have students that are in green that again have already met their spring AVT goals from winter testing, which really should be another source of celebration for our schools to really celebrate those students and to see kind of what's working with them to maybe get those off-track students back on track. So again, these are just ways that we can share this data. We take all this breakdown, this individual student data, we share that with schools, and then we kind of talk through it. We're available to answer questions and really just try to get them more aware of their progress monitoring and give them another tool to use to progress monitor their students. And then from that raw data, we can also create visualizations. This one is created using Data Studio, Google Data Studio. And this one is really, it was meant to help our schools that are designated as ATSI schools, which if we're all in South Carolina, we know that those are some additional targeted support and intervention schools that might have a subgroup, or improvement schools, sorry, that might have a subgroup that might need more support because they fell below that threshold according to some state benchmarks. So what we did was we took that raw data from the previous slide with all that student information, we dropped it into Google Data Studio, did a little manipulation, and we were able to now break down subgroup information by just doing some sorting and filtering. And we can provide that same data in a visualized format for our ATSI schools to see how their particular subgroup that we need to ramp up the game with are really improving or maybe not improving, and we might need to do a little bit more work with them. But again, just another progress monitoring tool that we can use, really honed in on a specific need, which is our ATSI schools. And they've really liked this. They've seen a great benefit in having this information. So our next step then, and Renaissance will hopefully agree with us that EduClimber, which we've just purchased as a district, is going to really help us maybe not have to do as much manipulation with this data in Data Studio. And we're hoping that EduClimber will provide us some more tools and some more visualizations to monitor progress in different ways. All right, and next we're going to have Renee talking about our progress monitoring, I believe, yes, STAR reports and videos and progress monitoring.
Okay, thank you, Matt. One of the challenges that we have at the district office is that we'll have school leaders and teachers frequently ask that they want to learn more about data, how to use data, and how to work with the STAR reports, but finding the time and taking them away from something else is one of our challenges. So we have found that it's probably better for us to just go ahead and attend the meetings that are already scheduled and share that information with them there. So one place we try to go is to our principals meetings or our lead teacher meetings or a specialist meeting. So something they already have scheduled. And then if they ask for something upon request and want us to come, we'll obviously come and share data and training for them at that time. And one report that we try to help them with is the progress monitoring report. And what we do here to try to, again, save them some time is At the district office, we print the progress monitoring report for every 4th through 8th grade student. And then we distribute them to the lead teachers at each building and then encourage the teachers to use this report as a student conference, a student data conference with each one of their students. So the student can see where they were in the fall, where they were in the winter, and where their AVT goal is for the spring. So it's a good way for teachers to sit with students to try to share what their goals should be for the spring. And then another report that we feel is helpful is the STAR growth proficiency chart. And as you can see here, I know it's a little bit small, but there are 4 quadrants, and we have low growth, high achievement, and then low growth, low achievement on the left side, and then high growth, high achievement, and high growth, low achievement. And each one of those circles, if you haven't used this report, I ran this one for a grade level. Each circle represents a teacher. So as a school leader, they could see where each of the teachers' classes fell on the proficiency chart. But I did hover over one of the teachers, and you can see it over that one bubble. So it does show how many students are in the class, what their median growth is, and there is a button to click on View Students. And if you were to click on that, it would refresh this same chart, but it would be for just the students in this teacher's particular class. And before you go to the next slide, there will be a video on the next slide, but it's going to start right away. So let me just introduce it. Another thing that we have heard from our school leaders and teachers is that they would like short video clips. Again, in the challenge of finding the right time to do the training, if we provided a short video clip, then they could just watch the video clip and have the training at whatever time worked best for them. So Matt and I are not actors, and we are not talented at creating videos, but we are doing our best. So this was our first one, and we felt that if we could be serious about the content that was in there, but keep it a little bit lighthearted and corny, for the script, it would maybe keep them a little more entertained. So here's just a short little 30-second clip.
Right next to that, we have some information about their proficiency and growth. So we have 3 students that we're sharing here with you. Renee, if you were going to be maybe concerned about a student and might need to dig a little bit deeper into the data, which one do you think would be the one that's most concerning?
Well, let me see. Let me take a look at these students here. Maybe, oh, I know. I think that 3rd student, the one that has low growth and low proficiency, more supports might be needed if we are looking at other data points and seeing similar results. Because STAR is just one test, so it is a good starting point for more.
So again, that was just a short clip to show you that we are doing what we can to find the time to work with our school leaders and teachers to share ways to use the reports and to utilize their data. And now moving on to Amber for CI3T.
So CI3T is our MTSS framework in Fort Mill. And one of the things that we noticed is, as you've seen, we've got a variety of different ways that we share data with schools. But sometimes we notice some trends in schools asking us like, well, is this good or not good? Knowing, is this working, or how they might want to analyze it. And then we also noticed that a lot of times schools were starting at the individual student level. And in our schools, we've got schools that have 600, 700, 800 students in them. And so to solve problems at the individual student level was very overwhelming for schools. So as part of our MTSS or CI3T data review, we started working with this idea of looking at the triangle as a ratio. And I call it the healthy triangle of an 80-15-5 ratio. So when we're looking at our student data and our universal screener data, how does it fall into that 80-15-5 with our 80% of our students getting their needs met at tier 1? And do we have about 20% of students who might need additional scoops? Obviously, we're fine if it's over 80%, but if it's below that, then we know that we've got some things to work on at tier 1, not just trying to send students into tiers 2 or 3 to get supports. So one thing that we have done is taken some of our universal screener data out of Schoolzilla and put it into Data Studio, which Matt referenced earlier. And so that all of our schools have some similar looking tools. And so they come together with me 4 or 5 times a year after each of our screening windows to look at school-wide data and analyze it from that 80-15-5 perspective. And so in that list of bullets at the bottom, we really want to start schools by looking at their school-wide data. So if I'm looking at my literacy data overall, whether, whatever grade levels your school serves, How is that 80-15-5 ratio looking? And then after that, we can take it to grade level and say, all right, how is each grade level looking 80-15-5? Is there a grade level that is exceeding the school's ratio? Is there a grade level that is underperforming in comparison? And that's a really good indicator that maybe that's the grade level that we want to push additional supports to. And so that's that data-based decision-making really at play. And then from there, those are things that school leadership teams would be doing. But from there, they can also then take it down to grade level, from the grade level and take it to grade levels where they can look at individual classrooms, and teachers that teach either a single class or multiple classes can look at their classroom level data. Is there a classroom that's doing better than another? If I teach multiple classes, is there a period that's doing better than another? Before we get to individual student data. The way that we often describe this is by starting at the big data, we're looking at the data to see if there is a challenge that's in place because of a system that we have put in place. We want to make sure that we solve it at the right level. We don't want to solve it at the individual student level. Solving it 800 times is very different than solving it at a school level. If students are underachieving because we have set up a system that makes it that way, we want to make sure that we fix it at the right place. And an individual classroom teacher often doesn't have the capacity to make that change, but building leadership does. So we talk about that as an analogy of, we don't want to send individual life preservers to help students when we need to send an entire lifeboat. And so that's the visual that often accompanies our description when we're talking about this 80-15-5 ratio and looking from data from big to small. On our next slide, you'll see another component that is part of our CI3T or MTSS work. Something that was really important for us was looking at entry and exit criteria. When I talked to other school districts and even the schools in our own district, one of the challenges that we were finding is that once students go to tier 2 or tier 3, we're not really sure when to release them. And so we had what we called lifers, kids that stayed in intervention forever because we weren't quite sure when to send them back. So each of our schools has an implementation manual with tier 2 and tier 3 supports that are available for academics and behavior and student well-being. And some of these are district-wide supports that we provide professional development and support with, and some of them are individualized to each school and they choose things for themselves. But the entry and exit criteria that are part of these tier 2 and tier 3 intervention grids are what TI described as big progress money, the big PM. The entry and exit criteria for us, like for academics, for example, might be their STAR data, because we know that entry criteria and exit criteria should really mirror each other. And those are very predictive of how students might be doing on state achievement exams. So when we look at what Matt shared with you earlier, if we've got students who are underperforming, not looking like they're going to be at meets or exceeds, that might be entry or exit criteria that would qualify a student for a particular intervention. And then we also have an area for progress monitoring, and it's not exactly the day-to-day informal. So it's not the lowercase PM that TI shared. So maybe it's medium. I don't know. We have uppercase and lowercase. I don't know. We need an in-between one. It can be more formalized. It might be a CBM, but with that progress monitoring piece, that's often skill specific. And when we're looking at tiers 2 and 3, what we know is a student might be making progress on a particular skill, and they may have mastered a skill, but they're not ready to leave intervention yet. They're not ready to meet that exit criteria. So for us, using the language of entry and exit criteria versus progress monitoring is a nice way to make a distinction of they have now mastered the skill, maybe adding and subtracting within 10. But if they're a third grader and they just mastered that, they're not ready to leave intervention. They're just ready for a new skill. So this is a way to help us clarify what we mean by entry and exit criteria and what we mean by progress monitoring for a particular skill. So those are some things that we have put into place that are consistent across our district to help us use some common language and help teachers, help schools use the tools and the information that's available to them to make some database decisions. Up next, we're going to look at some schools to see how they're using all of the things that we have talked about at the district level to support the students in their buildings.
So yes, I'm just going to begin by share with you all today just a little bit of how we use our data tools across our school with our teacher teams, and then how we involve our students in that process. So for our school, examining our academics at the school level begins with our universal screening data, which occurs 3 times a year. For us, that is STAR reading, STAR math, and then STAR early literacy. At the tier 1 level, we dig into that data during our PLT meetings, which I'll elaborate on in a little bit. but for the purpose of identifying students potentially in need of intervention. Our process begins by pulling the names of all students scoring below the 25th percentile or who were referred to our intervention process by a teacher. So then we get into our diagnostic information. So that universal screener is just indicating for us that a student is demonstrating risk on that measure, but we need to dig in deeper to look at the diagnostic tools we have to really hone in on what are the skill deficits and is this an intervention situation. So our intervention team follows up with every student on that list with additional diagnostic assessments. And depending on the subject area or the student grade level, these assessments may include the STAR CBMs. There's several of them that are extremely useful for this purpose. Also phonics screeners, number sense screeners, and also then our essential standards assessments. So this data is then compiled and it's triangulated with an agreed upon intervention rubric for our school to identify students who are currently demonstrating the greatest need based on that data-driven process and looking across multiple sources of information. Those students are then served in 6 to 8 week rounds of intervention. Students are progress monitored every other week with one of those diagnostic tools. So typically the diagnostic tool that indicated the greatest area of risk is what we are then using to progress monitor our students on that every other week schedule. The team meets regularly to discuss those students who are receiving interventions and looks at their growth across those progress monitoring tools to indicate whether any adjustments to their intervention or their intervention goals or the way that we're delivering that instruction, if any adjustments need to be made. Then that process will repeat itself after every universal screening window, fall, winter, and spring for our school. So we also look at this across our behavior and emotional well-being data. So this is also begins with the universal screening level. So it's very similar process to our academics. We begin with our universal screener, which is the SRSSIE. And we also utilize our educator handbook data, which is behavior referrals for minor or major behavior instances. So as a behavior and emotional well-being team, we pull the names of all students who scored in the high risk category in that SRSSIE in either internalizing or externalizing behaviors. We also pull the names of any student with 2 or more minor referrals or 1 or more major referral in the past quarter, so in between those screening windows. And then, of course, any names of students who are referred to our intervention process by a teacher, counselor, or administrator. So then after that, our team will begin gathering more diagnostic information. So our team gathers information using a lot of teacher surveys for this purpose. You can slide forward, Matt. Thanks. So our team gathers additional diagnostic information. It's usually qualitative information from our teachers. We send surveys to our teachers. We look at the details of those documented referrals. We also utilize what's called a Behavior Academy matching survey, which gives us more information about the potential targeted areas for intervention. And then database decisions are made to identify and then connect our students with the additional interventions they may need. Students are again served in 6 to 8 week rounds of intervention and progress monitored 2 to 3 times within that intervention round. Again, we utilize the diagnostic data tools to progress monitor our students. And our team meets regularly in between or during that intervention round to discuss their progress monitoring data, if the interventions we're using are making progress for those students and the growth we're seeing in them. That process again repeats after every universal screening window, which is fall, winter, and spring for our district. So now at the teacher level, going back to academics, while all of these efforts are extremely important at the intervention level, they wouldn't have a significant impact overall if we're not digging into and responding to the data we're seeing at the tier 1 level as well. So this work is done through our PLT process. At the beginning of the year, we really take a deep dive into our SC Ready scores and our end of year data. We look for trends amongst our student demographics, our subject areas, our content strands. We look for what's worked, what needs refining, what can we do better to improve our outcomes. And based on those trends, we adjust our long-range plans, we adjust our units, we adjust our instructional practices, our spiraling techniques. We don't only examine that data for the students we previously taught, but we also examine that data about the students who are currently sitting in front of us. What adjustments do we need to make about the way we deliver our instruction at the Tier 1 level? In the fall, we really dig into the STAR screening data, again, looking at and responding to the trends that we're seeing. So we begin tracking our students' percent of mastery on essential standards, which we use the standards mastery report for that purpose. And we determine the standards or skill areas to focus our small group instruction around. And we also look for opportunities to pre-teach some of the prerequisite skills that may be coming down the line. In winter, if you can, thank you. We continue to track our student growth on those essential standards and examine, are there students growing over time on the essential standards, particularly the ones we've been targeting in between screening windows. And we also take a deep dive into the student progress monitoring reports at this point in the year. Those are showing us whether or not our students are on track to meet that added value target growth. So we then, as a grade level teams and as school teams, a greater school-wide team, we set goals and we develop action plans for our students who maybe are not on track for meeting that added value target. So we focus on their lowest strand or area and the essential standards that are within those area strands. And that is where we provide the differentiated instruction to help grow those students in a very targeted and systematic way. As when we flip over to the behavior and social emotional well-being side of these things, we then know that behavior is often impacting our academics. So it's important to look into not only social emotional behaviors, but also our academic behaviors that we're looking to target with our students as well. So we do have monthly behavior PLT meetings with our teachers. We examine school-wide and grade level trends according to SRSSIE and also our educator handbook data. We look at different areas in our school building where issues may be occurring, times of day, how do our genders compare to one another? What about our internalizing versus our externalizing behavior? And from there, we set grade level and school-wide goals and create action plans that are focused around reteaching the different skills and life skills they need in these lessons. And we also emphasize our reinforcement strategies and a plan for consistently reinforcing those desired behaviors in our school. In the spring, we look at all of this data and we celebrate and reflect on how far we've come that school year. So with our students, the biggest way we involve our students at the elementary level is really by creating clarity for our students. We have school-wide assemblies. We have little tidbits in our school news. We have community meetings, small group lessons, individual discussions, all around our student goals, our school-wide goals, our goals for the small group instruction they're receiving and for them as individuals. We give explicit instruction around how, as we call it at Pleasant Knoll, how to put your best paw forward on our district and state assessments. And in varying settings in our school and situations across our school. We talk through test-taking strategies, how to get along with others, any of these targeted areas that we're finding in our data that we need to beef up with our students. We make sure our students have true clarity on what that looks like and sounds like in our building. And we know that ensuring success and growth is not just something that we're hoping for or is an isolated conversation amongst our administrators or our teachers, we have to teach into that and really involve our students so that they're clear on what the true expectations are.
Gosh, that's a hard act to follow. Sorry. I'm just always so wowed and envious at listening, just how the elementary schools have it just so well put together. And I'm like, I can't wait till we get to that point. But um, so we're at the middle school level, and we are just dipping our toe into this area of MTSS. And so we'll, in the next couple of slides, we'll go through kind of just where we are now, but also kind of where we started and where we would like to end up. And so our journey is not as fleshed out and detailed as the elementary schools, but we will get there, and we're learning as we go. And so for anybody who's joining us right now that is just starting their journey, or just in the early stages of it, like this is where we are. So go ahead, Matt. Thank you. Okay. So as far as our data sources, from our academics, we do use, as mentioned earlier, our STAR Math and STAR Reading as our universal screeners. And so we'll talk a little bit about those as well. And also mentioned earlier the common formative assessments that our PLTs will use for more day-to-day, and that not progress monitoring, but monitoring progress as well. And then our behavior screeners, we use a student risk screener, which is the internalizing and externalizing factors, or CIRSE, or SRSSIE, you've heard to referred to it as before. And then our educator handbook as well is a district-wide utilized behavior incidents data collection tool as well. Okay, so we've started with last year and also this year, and every year moving forward, we do kind of like teacher trainings and teacher refreshers, because ultimately they need to know where to find the data and how to actually dig into it. And so we've done talks through and workshop Wednesdays after schools on how to find the information, how to create these reports, and then how to also tell the difference between what an MAT is and an AVT is, and what does it all mean, and kind of how to identify students as well. So it's not just us having the conversations, but it's also the teachers having conversations and understanding the data as well. So we laid that groundwork first, and then after that, we analyze that data. So again, we administer the universal screeners 3 times, once in the fall, and then the winter, and then the spring. We'll use our universal screener Google Studio dashboard, as shown earlier. So you'll see there where number 2 is listed on the slide there. Just kind of how we've trended from fall to fall to fall, or winter to winter to winter, to kind of just see overall system-wide, how are we doing at our tier 1 level, and are we getting better, or closer to that 80% out of that 80-15-5, ideally higher. We're not going to complain about 90 or 100, but we do want the overall systems that we have in place to be supporting at least 80% of our population. And then from there, we can work with the smaller numbers. So we do look at that information. And when we do look at that, we follow a here's what, so what, now what protocol. And so we ask our teachers, when we present this information at grade level meetings, to just start by looking at the facts and the data. So no I think, or I wonders, or I feels just yet. First, we look at just the data itself. I can count, I notice, things like that. We kind of avoid the because or wonders. So after we get that baseline down, we then move on to the so what part of the protocol. And this is where we start to think about the whys, or I wonder, or I think, or maybe because, why we think certain things are trending in a certain way. And so offering questions to explore further of what might be the reasons that our numbers are maybe where they are. And then what action steps. So our next one is the now what, and then what action steps do we need to take from there? So this year we just started, we have a common time across all 3 grade levels, 6th, 7th, and 8th. It was a flex time originally, but this year we rebranded it as, we call it boost time. It's building opportunities for ongoing success and thinking. So at each middle school, they have their own version of that time, but it is a common time across the building where we can utilize it in a variety of ways. And so we've deemed it a 3-week rotation period of Wednesdays and Thursdays, twice a week, about 30 minutes each session. And it lasts for 3 weeks, so about 6 sessions, before we then either pull new kids into interventions or exit kids out. And then other than our content teams and counselors pulling students that might need intervention, we also have the remainder going to enrichment. So prior to that, we had just clubs, and those clubs could have looked like really anything. We've kind of changed it around so that they're a little bit more academic focused and kind of align with either standards or the South Carolina profile of a graduate. So they're working on things like maybe critical thinking, collaboration, communication skills, work ethic, perseverance, and things like that for those that don't need intervention. So it's a little bit more targeted enrichment. So if you can think of it as an enrichment, but kind of pushing those that don't need the intervention, pushing them a little bit further and expanding the way that they think and the way that they approach problem solving and things like that. So for the academic side of things, we have students who are identified, again, starting by looking at those universal screeners. And then from there, looking at PLT, common formative assessments or common summative assessments that are given, and kind of determining, are the students receiving the level of what they need at the tier 1, or are they needing some additional supports? And some of those students are pulled during that time. And then we also have our guidance counselors that have also started pulling students. Prior to us rolling this out, they used to push into classrooms. So they might target social studies 1 month and say, hey, we're going to be pushing into social studies classes to do some of these behavioral needs for the students. But now with this designated time, they're loving it because they actually have an opportunity now to not interfere with classrooms, but also to have a designated time where they can pull students and work with them on some of the skills that are needed. Because in order to get to the academics, some of them need the will components first before they could actually tackle the academic interventions as well. After that, some of the other things we're doing as well are monitoring these trends. So from beginning of year to middle of year and then to the end of the year, we kind of track like where our literacy, math, and behavior tier 2 numbers are and kind of where we're progressing, as well as our tier 3 numbers, and looking at the analytics behind that, and kind of again going with that green, yellow, and red combination to kind of narrow in on where are we and what do we need to work on. And then after that, pulling in our students is part of the conversation as well. Again, we started this last year and we're continuing this year. But as part of our CI3T, our MTSS framework that we use, we have our areas of behavior tier 1. So what does respect look like, responsibility, and best effort? And then what does that look like at our school specifically? And so we have students rate themselves 3 times a year. So the fall, winter, and spring on a scale of 1 to 5. And then the teachers have an opportunity to rate alongside that as well, and enabling that opportunity for conversations to occur. And that's built into the calendar year as well. And then also when they do receive those progress monitoring, student progress monitoring reports that are given to us by Renee and Matt from the district office, we can sit down and have those conversations with students as well of what was your score, what was your SGP on the reading, on the math in the fall, how are you doing now that it's winter, and just kind of what do you think you're doing that's contributing to that, having some of those reflective conversations as well, and letting the kids kind of see their data that has oftentimes kind of been a secret to them at this point. It's always kind of been more so for the teachers and for admin to kind of look at. But it's nice to kind of see them get excited about wanting to understand why we're taking these assessments and what does it mean for them and their growth. And then lastly, just kind of where we need to go next, because we're not fully there yet. And we really truly want to get to where our elementary counterparts are to kind of continue that K-5 progress into the 6th, 8th areas as well. And so building in those progress monitoring components within intervention, those entry and exit criteria for those skills that are being worked on during interventions, adjusting how we incorporate the decisions that we make around PLT discussions and kind of trying to make them more timely, where right now they're kind of spaced out where, you know, we might not have an opportunity to talk about it for another week or 2. We want to try and make that opportunity to have more real-time decision making within our PLT. So refining that process, and then also reaching out to families and developing some sort of a communication system with them, with all that goes on with being pulled for interventions and kind of progress monitoring with that. And then just continuing to build that student ownership component to eventually maybe building in digital portfolios or some form of portfolio format where they have data binders and their ability to kind of see their progress from 6th grade all the way to 8th grade before we release them off to the high schools.
We do have contact information that we will get to you at some point. We really do appreciate you giving us the opportunity to present today. We do have a really robust system in place here in Fort Mill. So if we can answer any questions for you, we'd be more than happy to do that. And again, we'll share our contact information with you, I guess through email. Maybe Nicole can help us out with that. Thank you.
Wow. I'm very, very impressed. I was actually taking notes. There are certain things that I heard in you all's conversation that just does my heart good. Healthy triangle. I had never heard that. But it describes it perfectly. I really like that language. Understanding that the data at a district level may be too big for individual teachers to handle. So you guys stepping in and making sure that that data is disaggregated in a way that teachers don't feel like they're just being dumped on. You guys are well within the comprehensive, you have a comprehensive assessment system, really solid, and just what I was hearing from that district level down to those building levels. The fact that you guys are reflective in your practices, you guys truly have that MTSS mindset. I love that. Here's what, so what, now what? I mean, it was very, very rich conversation.